We have a Fox News alert. Sources tell Fox News that the records seized by the FBI during the raid on Mar-a-Lago were covered by attorney-client privilege. And back in June, the former president's lawyers certified that no classified material was even at the property.
Fox and Friends contributor Bill Bennett joins us now. Bill, great to see you this morning.
Thank you.
I think I want to go straight to this issue with you, Bill. You've been around, you've covered and been within administrations for quite some decades. You know, if I listen to alternative media today, and there's classified documents, no one is above the law, right? The rule of law applies to everyone. I'm curious, when it comes to classified documents, famously, President Nixon said, if the president does it, then it is not illegal. Is that not truly the standard when it comes to classified documents? The president has the ability to, at any time, declassify anything.
The president does. There is a procedure that the president must follow, but the president can declassify these documents. We cannot exaggerate the importance of this situation and the deadly seriousness of it. This is a former president of the United States, very possibly the candidate for president on the Republican side against Joe Biden or whoever it is in 2024. And if you look at the various acts that are suggested being violated, one of them is the Espionage Act, accusing a former president, a future candidate for president, of espionage. Now, everybody's talking about the affidavit. The affidavit will clarify what justified the warrant. I'm not so sure. I think it could still be very general and very vague. You know, sober authorities like Andy McCarthy have said, look, this is beginning to feel very much like a fishing expedition. They went down there to get whatever they could, to find out whatever they could use against President Trump, former President Trump. And Andy McCarthy believes, and many people believe, it's about January 6th. The larger picture, very quickly, is a crisis of legitimacy in this country. The liberals, the progressives, feel that Donald Trump is not a legitimate person, not a legitimate candidate, wasn't a legitimate president, and his followers not much better. Conservatives, on the other hand, believe that by the actions of this government, it has delegitimized itself. The FBI is not what the FBI should be. Maybe we'll get some clarification from that affidavit. I'm not so sure. Let's wait and see.
It's very well put, a legitimacy crisis.
Very well put, for sure. Great insight. Well, I want to move to education as well, something where, as the Education Secretary, you know a lot about, sir. The current Education Secretary tweeted about the shortage of teachers and blamed it on something interesting. We want to get your take. This is Secretary Miguel Cardona on a tweet saying, to address the teacher shortage issue, which exists in America, we must address the teacher respect issue in our country. We must stop normalizing providing teachers with inadequate resources to be successful. Mr. Secretary, is this a respect issue?
Certainly not a resources issue. In some cases, it's a respect issue because parents during COVID looked over their kid's shoulder and said, what are they teaching? Why are they doing that? Look, teachers earn parents' trust. And as we used to say, trust but verify. There are still a lot of teachers out there who parents trust, but there's a new feeling in the land, and that is we have to look at these teachers, we have to look at the curriculum plan, we have to find out what it is they're teaching. Parents are now much more vigilant. And I don't know if you noticed that poll, I don't know if you want to talk about this, but for the first time in my memory, Republicans have more confidence from the public in education than Democrats do. What Miguel Cardona, the Secretary of Education, is talking about is something that he and his unions are responsible for. They have reaped and the teachers have sown the results of that catastrophic falling behind during COVID. There was no reason for these kids not to be in school. They need to get back in school. We need to regain lost ground. Math, English, history, science. We've got to put it on, and put it on very seriously. And parents will now exercise a great deal more choice, as they are doing around the country, in terms of where they send their children to school. Respect has to be earned. It's no longer a given.
Wow. Excellent points, Bill Bennett. And I want to mention this as well. I'm really concerned about the fact that so many kids today, because they're learning all this woke stuff, are not getting the basics. And so we're talking today with you, the earlier subject, we all see this as unprecedented, right? And we know all the constitutional issues around it. This now seems normal to the next generation because of what they're not being taught in school and also because of what's unfolding before us. Are we losing the next generation? Will they be normalized to this kind of extra constitutional actions by a ruling party and everything else that's happening because we're not teaching the basics?
Are we losing next generation? It depends. And it depends on the efforts of parents and teachers. But teachers must gain the trust of parents again. That was lost during COVID. And if they want to regain it, they need to explain to parents what it is they're teaching and why they're teaching it. But you are seeing parents move in other directions from the government schools. And I'll tell you, the burden of proof now is on these schools to suggest we are teaching the things students learn. But the question you asked, Rachel, is a good one. Have we lost this generation? Not yet. It depends on our efforts.
It depends on school choice, really, right?
Well, largely on school choice, but yes, and I think that's a very important instrument that parents now have that they didn't have before, especially in states like Arizona, where the money is essentially in the backpack of the student, and they can take that money wherever they want, private school, homeschool, public school, whatever. School choice is a very powerful instrument, but there's also a culture in the classroom, which Pete knows about very well from the book he wrote, which in many cases needs to be overcome. I wrote a book several years ago with some other guys about education. Meet with the teachers. Parents, meet with the teachers. What are the objectives? What are we learning this year? What are the reading? I want to see what it is you're going to ask my child to read and to talk about. We need that vigilance. Otherwise, we may lose an important part of this generation.
It's great advice. I think I'll be taking up that advice in the next couple of weeks as my kids head back to school. What are the objectives? What are we learning here?
Mr. Secretary Bill Bennett.
What are we learning?
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
You betcha. You betcha.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.